Hello and welcome to New York Now. I'm your co-host Kathleen Trigg-Jones, sitting in for A.R. Bernard. Are your children overscheduled? As hard as it may be to believe, children can actually feel overwhelmed and overworked too. In today's fast-paced world, many parents don't want to miss any opportunity to cultivate their children's talents and interests, so they sign them up for any and everything. Soccer on Monday, piano Tuesday, dance Wednesday. Tired just thinking about it, and so forth and so on. But how much is too much? Please welcome Kamyra Harding, a mother of one son who writes and consults on parenting and family issues. Dr. Christine Doyle, the Director of Clinical Services at the Albert Ellis Institute, and Dr. Bill Crane, author and professor of psychology at City College. Thank all of you for being here today. Are we really putting our children in this many activities starting at 1? It's just too much, right?
Absolutely. You were talking about piano on Monday, soccer on Tuesday. There's piano Monday at 4 o'clock, soccer at 5, dance at 6, then come home, do homework.
Oh, you forgot about the school day, though. Right.
Correct.
Okay,
right.
School.
Right. And then there's all that homework. So, yes, we are putting our kids through too much.
Why is it too much? You're a psychologist. You've written several books, Reclaiming Childhood, Letting Children Be Children. Right. We couldn't say it any better.
Right. They need time to play. They're missing out on spontaneous, unstructured play. And through play, they develop their imaginations and they develop their creativity. And when we overstructure times for this, we really put them at risk, because it's like they become robots. Most of the activities we put them in are adult-directed, and they don't have time to use their imaginations and to work out difficulties with one another, to actually relate to other kids. They also miss time in natural settings. They miss time in which they can observe birds and insects and plants, time and develop powers of patient observation, which happens in natural settings. The natural settings foster their creativity and give them a sense of belonging to the web of life, the larger web of life. So play in natural settings is very important. It's almost totally absent today because of soccer, dance lessons, homework. Kids hardly outside. There's a lot of research indicating that kids just are not outdoors at all. So many of their capacities really to observe patiently, to create, are getting shortchanged. It's very serious.
You know, it's very interesting that you say that, Dr. Crane, because I think as a parent you feel pressure to put your children in so many things, and you quite frankly do forget about child play. Do you agree, Kamyra?
I agree. I would even take it a step further. I think that we as a society overdo everything. We overdo eating, we overdo spending, and we overdo our activities. And a lot of parents who are overscheduling their children, and it starts before the first birthday. It starts with these mommy and me classes at 3 months old. They're used to being overscheduled. And so they just take their child into this world with them, and they want to provide the best for the children. They want them to be competitive. If all the other mothers in the neighborhood are doing it, or all the other parents, they want to do it also. But you have to know your child.
Now you have a 3-year-old son. Mm-hmm. What kind of activities do you have your son in at 3?
Okay, at 3, actually, in order to address this, because I was a mommy in the different classes and running around to the different classes with the strollers, I put him in a Montessori program part-time. That takes care of a lot of the activities and learning and the friends, and he goes out and he has gym time and playground time. And then on Saturdays we take him to Spanish. And he also takes swimming too, but I'm silly. Okay. I try to be moderate. I try to be a moderate mom and not have them do too many activities. I know kids who have 3 on a Saturday and a couple after school during the week, and they seem tired.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you think that being in New York also contributes to it? Because I think New Yorkers in general tend to be very, very busy. It's very fast-paced all the time. I'm not sure we know how to relax. What would you think?
I would absolutely agree with that. Just walking to work, everyone has their cell phones on now. Checking their BlackBerries on their cell phones, not paying attention to where they're going. There is this inherent pressure to keep moving, because if I'm not moving, then I'm being lazy. Something's wrong. So there's this myth that doing nothing is unproductive, when it's actually quite the opposite.
Now, at the Albert Ellis Institute, you deal with a lot of family issues and childhood issues. Does this all sound very familiar to you?
It sounds all too familiar. And in fact, I'm seeing now a lot of adults that were overscheduled as children who have real difficulty with time management, can't carve out any free time because they just don't know how. They were never taught, and they think that there's something wrong with having a block of time to just relax.
So I'm not so abnormal after
No.
that. I'm just kidding. Well, I have I have a 3 and a 5-year-old, and I do agree, Kamyra, with the pressure that you get. I remember when I was pregnant with my children and people coming up to me saying, well, what elementary school are they going to go to? You know, you have to start thinking about these things right now. And you mean they haven't been tested by a psychologist yet when they're 6 months old? And well, how are they ever going to pass the psychological exam to get into top schools when they're 3? You just feel pressured, but is that healthy?
It's not. We're obsessed with the future in this society. Kamyra mentions about it's a societal problem, and we think that what the child will become, primarily what college they're going to get admitted to. Parents are just so focused on this. It's like there's a judgment day coming, and that's when the kids get their college admissions. And the parents think that they will be exposed to the world as
It's the parents' judgment,
yeah,
not the
it
child's.
is. It is. It's,
Right.
and they will be exposed precisely. They will be exposed to the world as a success or a failure. My child got into Princeton. Where did yours go? Well, we don't know yet. You know that they face that, or they don't want to go to college. But what we do, we focus so much on the future that we ignore the present and the child's right to be a child. Childhood itself is a stage that's important in its own right. And it has its own rewards, its own strengths. Through play, for example, children become very imaginative, and their make-believe play, for example, is sort of like a theater director producing very sophisticated and advanced play, and that's important. There are artistic activities. We don't usually put much emphasis on the arts because of the how's that going to get the child into a prestigious college? It doesn't usually look that way. They're better off taking advanced placement science and so on. Right. But their artistic development is very, very important. They're very creative artists in young childhood, and they need time to develop these strengths. The arts, their contact with nature, their play. Through free play, they will develop these things. If parents could just realize that the future is not everything. You have to take things step by step, and childhood itself is essential. Right. Give them time to be a child.
Now, I don't want to make any parents feel bad who are watching. I don't want you to think that, oh, you've got to pull your children out of every activity that you have them in. But I think it's probably important, and I would wonder if you all agree, to find activities that that are modeled after what you just described. So it's okay to put them in an art class, but as long as it's an art class that is not trying to teach them how to read a whole cookbook or read a whole art book, but instead teaching them how to use their imagination to create things. Do you find that in the activities you have your son in?
I find that, as a matter of fact, I practice that. I wanted my son to speak Spanish, but it's my family's native tongue, and I really wanted him to learn it properly. My accent's not that great, but I waited to put him in a class until I found a Spanish class that was fun and appropriate for a 3-year-old. I kept finding these very academic programs where they sat at desk and they were drilled on vocabulary words, and I thought, that's going to turn him away from learning, let alone Spanish. And I waited until we found something fun, and he loves it. Okay. And he speaks it to whomever will listen to him.
Right. Should your children have a say in what you do put them in, the activities that you choose for them?
Absolutely. As young as 1st grade, you should be including them in making the decision. It gives them a sense of control. They'll enjoy the activity, and I would also say limit the number of activities. That way they could become more masterful at them, as opposed to getting them involved in 10 different activities where they're not able to have any success because they're too busy running from one to another. So absolutely include them in the decision.
Okay. And from a psychological standpoint, you mentioned that the independent play that they get involved in helps them to be creative thinkers. Are there any studies that show anything about children being in a bunch of activities before the age of 3, how much more successful or not successful they are?
I don't know of the studies on that. I do know that there are studies that children who engage in a lot of make-believe play actually do better in their academic work later on. So that's important, and that's spontaneous play. Adults can play a role, so to speak, with that. They can, if a child starts pretending that there's going to be a store and they want to sell things, and often they'll want the mom to be a customer or something, and the mom takes the directions from the child.